But everywhere else, we got some of that stuff going on. Sound good, but they're not sound in their theology or history or philosophy or politics, deeply imbued with a voice that has a rhetorical spleen that is beautiful, a rhetorical patina that is powerful and shining, but no substance beneath that. King said, I don't want to do nothing like that. I don't want to be no minister. Then he met Benjamin Elijah Mays, one of the great preachers and professors and college presidents, and he saw that you could be intelligent and articulate and a Christian at the same time. 19 years old, he graduates, goes on to seminary at Crozer Theological Seminary outside of Philadelphia, takes some classes at University of Pennsylvania, then enrolls to get a PhD at Boston University, comparing the theologies of Henry Nelson Wyman and Paul Tillich. One of them believed that God was personal and involved in human history and controlled the destiny of men and women. And another one said, no, God just basically creates the world and it unwinds as it should. King, of course, believed in a personal God, touching human history, driving the forces of destiny. As he is finishing his PhD, he goes on to Montgomery. There, and he's quoting Reinhold Niebuhr, the great theologian, he said, the battering rams of historical necessity thrust me into the spotlight. He wasn't trying to shine. He wasn't trying to be first. He wasn't trying to be head of no organization. He wanted to finish his PhD, pastor his church. He returned to the South because he wanted to serve. He wanted to remove the stain of Jim Crow from the legacy of black struggle. He wanted black people to be free of the encumbrances that were imposed upon them as a result of white supremacy and the superiority of one race over another. He knew that was a lie. He knew that was fundamental mendacity, and so he struck out for the territory and assumed that by going back to the South, he would be able to serve his people. And there, in a small city at the cradle of the Confederacy, Martin Luther King Jr.'s destiny began to evolve, and he was thrust into leadership, the leadership of a bus boycott, along with working class people like E.D. Nixon and Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks didn't stumble into her greatness. If you read the new book, At the Dark End of the Street, written by a white female professor of history at Wayne State University, she brilliantly recalls that a decade before the bus boycott, Rosa Parks was working against violence against women of all color, but especially against African American women. She was an activist. She was brilliant. She wasn't no ignorant seamstress who sat on a bus and stumbled into history. She meant to do that. And I say that because when we celebrate Dr. King, we celebrate all people who struggled. Black and white, red, brown, and yellow, Latinos. We celebrate Jewish brothers and sisters like Abraham Yahshua Heschel. We celebrate Italian women like Viola Luizza. We celebrate those like Cesar Chavez, working for the workers' rights, migrants in this country. We celebrate not just King, but we especially celebrate that battalion and contingent of women who never got their names written in history. They were not as lettered and tutored as him. Some were, but they never got their recognition. They never received just due for what they did. So when you celebrate Dr. King, you celebrate those working women that you saw in the help, and yet they were much more powerful and aggressive and supportive than what you saw there. That's who you celebrate as well. And so King becomes a leader, and he begins to lead the fight for justice along with Thurgood Marshall, along with Roy Wilkins, along with Ella Baker, along with Fannie Lou Hamer, along with Stokely Carmichael, along with James Baldwin. He begins to think and speak, and he brings America together, but not before the bitter divisions of America rose up and people saw King as a troublemaker. Please don't be misled by the fact that we sit here now, thousands of us and millions across the globe, to celebrate the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. A lot of people did not like Dr. King. Oh, we love him now. As one poem said, now that he's safely dead. Now that he can't do nothing, say nothing, speak for himself, now people embrace him. But when he was alive, and I'm not just talking about white bigots in the South, I'm talking about black folk too who were scared. We don't want no troublemaking come around here. We gets along with our white peoples. And so Dr. King was seen as a threat. He was seen as a threat to the white order. Why? Because you can't claim Negroes are dumb and stupid and unintelligent with a man with a golden voice and a silver tongue speaking that great oratory. You ain't going to out-talk him, although they did give him a C in preaching. Guess who was wrong? He was the living embodiment of not only the sacred legacy of Christian struggle against forces of oppression, he was the beautiful and noble embodiment of the legacy of the founding fathers. That's why he quoted them. That's why he said, "My dream is deeply rooted in the American dream." Martin Luther King Jr. struggled to make America better, but my brothers and sisters don't live in what Gore Vidal calls the United States of amnesia. And you know who supplies the theme song? Barbra Streisand. What's too painful to remember, we simply choose to forget. So now we be, as my daddy used to say, from Georgia, acting like, or making like, we all love King. We didn't love him. We were scared of him. We didn't know what he was doing. This man with a PhD from Boston University, yet he dressed up in jeans and went to jail. What's up with that? Here is a man who used his intelligence and his oratory to speak out against injustice. He joined with many white brothers and sisters, many black brothers and sisters, many poor brothers and sisters, and together they were able to claim that America must make a change and a difference. Can you believe it that there was a time when people went to one water fountain, not the other? Like white water was wetter? How adolescent is that? Nah, you can't go where I go. That's kind of adolescent. Grow up, America. Can't we all do it together? King said it made no sense. We're all Americans. Black people helped build this country into what it was today, what it was then and what it is today. Their labor was significant. Their brilliance was significant. Their architecture was significant. Their spirituals were significant. Their love was significant. Their devotion was significant. Let everybody live together. And so Martin Luther King Jr. spoke in 1963 about his dream, but a lot of people have frozen King in the 1963, like he only had one hit. He had some more songs, right? We heard Brother Preston Jackson and Sister Paige over here. They got more than one song. They don't just keep singing the same song. It was a great song. It was a great speech. And Dr. King delivered it brilliantly, but we know that was not the only speech he gave, and we don't even listen to the entire speech he gave. We seize on the I have a dream part, but he started differently. 50 years ago, great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today. Well, no extra charge for any of the background noise that I'm replicating up here today. Signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Well, this momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope for millions of Negroes who were manacled in slavery. Then he went on to say that many people were marooned on a tiny island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. He went on to say that the whirlwinds of revolt would continue to shake the foundation of this nation until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. He said that we come to D.C. refusing to believe that the great vaults of democracy are empty. He said we got a promissory note. We got a check. And it done bounced. But y'all got the dough, pay up. To appeal to the vernacular that is now au courant, he said, nation better have my money. So Dr. King used all of that radical legacy, but nobody listened as much as they listened later. And he also said this. He said the Negro in the South can't vote, and the Negro in the North believes he has nothing for which to vote. He spoke against police brutality. He warned us about the consequences of black supremacy in place of white supremacy. He said it never should be supremacy, it should be equality. Then Mahalia Jackson, noticing he was reading a speech. And you know, Dr. King could deliver a speech, but he was at his best when he was improvising without looking down, and he was reading that day. He wanted to make sure it was right. 34 years old, young and tender, and yet a great leader. And so Mahalia Jackson, women weren't allowed on the stage except to sing. Even as you fight one oppression, you can often duplicate another. Even as those men were noble in their fight against white supremacy and apartheid, they were reproducing male supremacy. Dorothy Height was one of the great leaders. She was not allowed to speak that day. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his powerful speech, and Mahalia Jackson said, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." Black women may not be on stage, but they will be heard. And so he put the paper down, and he started really talking. He said, "Despite the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream." And he went on, "From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From Lookout Mountain of Tennessee." He imagined a day when all of God's children would be able to sit down together. He said 34 words when he was 34 years old. "I have a dream. One day my 4 little children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." And now we see some of our brothers and sisters in this day seeking to use Dr. King's words against him, pretend that we have overcome all of the obstacles and barriers to racism, and now suggest we should never pay attention to the color of one's skin in a notion of color blindness. That ain't what he was saying. What he was saying was that we should work toward a world where all human beings will be respected. None of us should have to be blind to our color. I don't want you to be blind to my color. I just don't want you to hold my color against me. We see this with our president. As you've already heard, I believe you can be critical of Obama, but some folk just mad because he got style, because he got swag, because he walk out. Some people mad because he got a tall, terrific wife, chocolate, ebony hue. That nasty, rude, ridiculous congressman or politician who was talking about she got a big old, yes she do. Why you being mad? Don't be mad. You can't look at it and grab it. What we can, we produce it on the regular. I'm not reducing the wonder and splendor of black female identity to a behind or a body. Michelle Obama went undergraduate to Princeton. She went to Harvard to get a law school. She supported her family. She's brilliant and intelligent and fine. And if you got it, back that thing up. The brain, that is. Some people just can't stand to see them together. Ebony and ivory. And some people